They called her the Ghost of Iron Vale. For as long as she could remember, Aelith Morn had moved through the halls of the Alpha King's fortress like a shadow, invisible to the nobles who feasted on silver platters while she scrubbed their filth from the stone. She was a war orphan, a packless nothing, sold into servitude before she could walk. No wolf stirred in her blood, no family name protected her. She was less than Omega. She was forgotten. But the nobles didn't notice the way she listened. They didn't see how her violet eyes tracked every whispered conversation, every secret glance between the king's fiancé and the general who visited her chambers after midnight. They thought silence meant stupidity. They were wrong. Tonight, Aelith would do something that would either save the kingdom or end her life. She would pass a note to the most powerful wolf on the continent, and the words on that paper would burn down everything. Get ready. Because the ghost is about to become the storm, and the whole court will learn what happens when you underestimate the girl who cleans your floors. The kitchens of Ironvale Keep were sweltering despite the winter frost creeping along the windows. Aelith's hands were raw, the skin split across her knuckles from scrubbing the iron cauldrons with sand and lye. Her knees ached against the cold flagstones. A strand of dark hair, the color of burnt copper, had escaped her braid and clung to her damp forehead. She was 19 now, though no one had ever celebrated her birth. The head cook, a thick-necked woman named Berta, had once told her she'd been brought to the keep as an infant, wrapped in a blood-stained blanket with no note, no name, no explanation. The old Alpha King had allowed her to stay out of superstition. Killing a baby was bad luck. His son, the current king, had inherited her along with the throne, like furniture. Morn! The bark came from above. Aelith didn't flinch. She knew that voice too well. Corvin Slade descended the kitchen stairs. He was the master of servants, a lean man with a face like a starved fox and eyes that enjoyed cruelty the way some men enjoyed wine. He carried a leather switch at his belt, and he used it freely. "You missed a spot in the Great Hall," Corvin said, stopping beside her. His boot nudged the bucket of gray water. "Lady Sarilith nearly slipped on the stones this morning." "I cleaned the Great Hall twice, Master Corvin." Aelith kept her voice flat, her gaze on the cauldron. The switch cracked across her shoulders. She sucked in a breath but didn't cry out. Crying made it worse. "Are you calling the future queen a liar?" "No, Master Corvin." "Then you admit your failure." "Yes, Master Corvin." Another strike, this one catching her ear. Warmth trickled down her neck. "Clean it again. And when you're done, Lady Sarilith wants her chambers prepared for tonight's banquet. Fresh linens, fresh flowers, and not a speck of dust, or I'll have you whipped in the courtyard." He left without waiting for a response. Aelith exhaled slowly, counting to 10, letting the rage settle into the cold, quiet place inside her chest where she kept all the things she couldn't say. 19 years of this. 19 years of bowed heads and bleeding hands and swallowed screams. But something had changed in the last few weeks. Something she couldn't explain. It started as a hum in her bones, a vibration beneath her skin that woke her in the middle of the night. Sometimes she heard whispers in a language she didn't recognize, ancient and rumbling, like thunder trapped underground. And her eyes. Twice now she'd caught her reflection in a water basin and seen her violet irises flickering with veins of gold. She told no one. Questions meant attention, and attention meant danger. Aelith wrung out her rag and stood, her joints protesting. Tonight was the Winter Ascension banquet, the grandest event of the year. Every alpha from the northern territories would attend, and in 3 days, King Soren Vale would marry Lady Sarilith Kane, uniting the two most powerful bloodlines on the continent. At least, that was the plan. Aelith knew something the king didn't, and that knowledge was a blade pressed against her own throat. Aelith had only seen King Soren Vale from a distance, but each glimpse burned itself into her memory like a brand. He was not what she expected a tyrant to look like. The old king, his father, had been brutal, a wolf who ruled through fear and public executions. But Soren was different. He had taken the throne 5 years ago at 22, after his father's sudden death, and in that time, he had abolished the debtors' prisons, reduced the servant taxes, and executed 3 nobles who were caught trafficking Omega women to the Eastern slavers. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with black hair that fell across a face carved from cold angles and sharp shadows. His eyes were the pale gray of winter ice, and when he looked at someone, it felt like being pinned by a predator deciding whether you were prey or beneath notice. Aelith had decided she was the latter. She had to be. But sometimes, when she was polishing the banister of the grand staircase or refilling the oil lamps in the corridors, she caught herself watching him. The way he moved, controlled, deliberate. A wolf who never wasted energy. The way he listened to petitioners with actual attention, not the glazed performance of his father. The way a muscle feathered in his cheek whenever Serlith touched his arm, so subtle that no one seemed to notice. Except Aelith. She noticed everything. It was how she survived. And she had noticed something else too. Something that made her blood run cold. 3 weeks ago, Aelith had been delivering fresh candles to the East Wing when she passed Lady Serlith's private study. The door was cracked, and voices drifted out. Aelith knew she should keep walking. Curiosity killed servants faster than plague. But she stopped. The dosage must be precise. Serlith's voice, smooth as poisoned honey. Too little, and he'll only weaken. Too much, and he'll die before the ceremony. I need him alive long enough to sign the unification decree. A male voice responded, one Aelith recognized. General Maddox Wren, commander of the Iron Veil armies. And after? After, his tragic death will be blamed on an assassin from the East March. You'll lead the retaliation. By the time the dust settles, I'll be Queen Regent, and you'll be my king consort. What about the council? Serlith laughed, a sound like shattering glass. Half are already bought. The rest will fall in line when they see the army behind me. Loyalty is just fear wearing a pretty mask. Aelith had fled, her heart slamming against her ribs. She didn't sleep that night, or the next. For 3 weeks she wrestled with the knowledge. Who could she tell? The guards reported to General Wren. The servants reported to Corven, who was Serlith's creature. The nobles wouldn't believe a packless orphan over the future queen. She had no proof. Only her word, and her word was worth less than the mud on her shoes. But the banquet was tonight, the wedding in 3 days, and somewhere in this keep, a king was being slowly poisoned by the woman he was about to marry. Aelith stared at her reflection in the polished silver she was cleaning. Her face was gaunt, shadows pooling beneath her violet eyes. The hum in her bones had grown louder today, almost a growl. She couldn't do nothing, even if it killed her. By tonight, the king would know the truth. The great hall of Ironvale Keep blazed with light. 1,000 candles flickered in iron chandeliers, casting dancing shadows across the vaulted ceiling. Long tables groaned under platters of roasted venison, honeyed figs, and bread still steaming from the ovens. The air was thick with the scent of wine, wood smoke, and the musk of hundreds of wolves in their finery. Aelith moved through the chaos of the kitchens, carrying a tray of empty goblets. Her heart was a war drum. Beneath her worn servant's tunic, pressed flat against her ribs, was a folded piece of parchment. The note was simple. She had written it with stolen ink, her handwriting disguised into blocky, unrecognizable letters. Your fiancé poisons your wine. General Wren commands the traitors. They move after the wedding. Trust no one in your inner circle. The proof is in her study. The vial is hidden in the hollow base of the ivory jewelry box. She had debated signing it. In the end, she left it anonymous. If she was caught, she wanted the option of lying. The servants' corridor led out behind the high table where the nobility sat on an elevated platform. Aelith had volunteered for refill duty, claiming she wanted the extra copper coin. In reality, it was the only way to get within arm's reach of the king. She steadied her breathing and pushed through the door. The noise hit her like a wave. Laughter, shouted toasts, the scraping of chairs. At the center of the high table sat King Soren Viel. He wore black, as always, the only color a silver dire wolf pinned at his collar. His expression was unreadable, his goblet untouched before him. Beside him, Lady Sarilith Kane was a vision in crimson silk. Her golden hair was piled in elaborate braids threaded with rubies. She leaned close to Soren, whispering something that made her smile and made his expression harden almost imperceptibly. Aelith's stomach clenched with hatred so pure it startled her. She approached the table with her tray, eyes down, movements practiced. Invisible, just another servant. No one looked at servants. She reached the king's place. His goblet was still full, untouched, she noticed with relief. Perhaps he was cautious by nature, or perhaps the poison hadn't been administered yet tonight. She set down a fresh goblet, and her hand trembled. Now. It had to be now. Aelith let the folded note slip from her palm. It landed silently beside his hand, half hidden by the edge of his plate. She turned to leave. A hand clamped around her wrist. Aelith's blood froze. She looked up, and King Soren Viel's winter-pale gaze was locked onto hers. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The grip on her wrist was iron, inescapable. His eyes flicked down to the note, then back to her face. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger, not yet. Calculation. You. His voice was low, meant only for her. Stay. My lord, That wasn't a request. Sarilith turned, her smile faltering as she noticed the exchange. Soren? Is something wrong with the help? The king's gaze didn't leave Aelith's face. Nothing. A clumsy spill. I'll handle it. He rose, still gripping Aelith's wrist, and guided her away from the table with a casualness that belied the steel in his hold. To the court, it looked like a lord escorting a careless servant to be reprimanded. Nothing unusual, nothing worthy of attention. But Aelith saw Sarilith's eyes follow them, and in those beautiful blue depths, she saw suspicion beginning to coil like a serpent. Soren pulled her into an alcove behind a heavy tapestry. The noise of the banquet became muffled, distant. He released her wrist and unfolded the note. Aelith watched his face as he read. The mask cracked, just for a moment. His eyes widened, his nostrils flared. Then the mask returned, colder than before. "Who sent you?" he demanded, his voice ablade. "No one, my lord. I wrote it myself." "Why should I believe a servant's accusation against my future queen?" Aelith met his gaze. She was terrified, but terror was an old friend by now. "Because I have nothing to gain by lying. If I'm wrong, you'll execute me for slander. If I'm right, your fiancé will have me killed for treason." She swallowed hard. "I came to you because I had nowhere else to go, and because you're the only person in this keep who might actually care about the truth." Soren stared at her. The silence stretched, thick as smoke. Then his gaze dropped to her throat, and he went very still. "Your pendant," he said. "Where did you get that?" Aelith blinked. Her hand flew to her neck. The pendant was old, tarnished, shaped like a crescent moon wrapped in thorns. She'd had it as long as she could remember. The only thing that had come with her as an infant. "I've always had it. I don't know where." She stopped. Soren's face had changed. He wasn't looking at her like a servant anymore. He was looking at her like she was a ghost. That crest, he breathed. That's not possible. Before Aelith could respond, shouts erupted from the great hall. The tapestry was ripped aside, and General Wren stood there, 6 guards at his back, Serelith behind them with a triumphant smile. "There she is," Serelith announced, pointing at Aelith. "The assassin. She was trying to poison the king. I saw her slip something into his cup." The guards seized Aelith's arms, wrenching her away from Soren. "No!" Aelith screamed. "She's lying. She's the traitor." Serelith's laugh was light, musical. "The desperate lies of a killer. Soren, darling, I told you we should have purged the pack less vermin years ago." Soren's expression was unreadable. He looked at the note in his hand, then at Aelith, then at his fiancée. The silence was suffocating. "Take her to the cells," Soren said quietly. Aelith's heart shattered. "My lord, please." "Take her to the cells," Soren repeated, "and ensure she is unharmed. I will interrogate her personally." The last thing Aelith saw before the guards dragged her into the darkness was Serelith's smile faltering, and the king's storm-gray eyes watching her with an intensity that felt like a promise or a threat. She couldn't tell which. The cells beneath Iron Vale Keep were carved into the mountain itself, cold, damp, and black as a grave. Water dripped from somewhere in the darkness, a maddening rhythm that counted the hours Aelith spent shivering on the stone floor. They had taken her pendant. That loss hurt worse than the bruises blooming across her ribs where the guards had been less than gentle. The pendant was her only connection to whoever she had been before the keep, before the servitude, before the endless gray years of survival. Without it, she felt unmoored, like a ship whose anchor had been cut. The hum in her bones had grown into a roar. Her skin felt too tight, too hot, despite the freezing air. The whispers in that ancient language were constant now, a chorus of voices she couldn't understand, but somehow felt in her marrow. She didn't know how long she waited, hours, perhaps a full day. When the cell door finally groaned open, it wasn't the king who entered. It was Lady Serelith. She was still wearing her crimson gown, though she'd removed the rubies from her hair. In the torchlight, she looked less like a noble and more like a demon, her beauty sharp and predatory. 2 guards flanked her. General Wren stood behind, his hand resting on the pommel of his sword. "Leave us," Serelith said to the guards. "Wait outside." They obeyed without question. Serelith crouched down, bringing her face level with Aelith's. Her perfume was cloying, roses and something underneath, something metallic. "You know," Serelith said conversationally, "I almost admire you. A packless rat, trying to bring down a future queen. It's audacious. Stupid, but audacious." Aelith said nothing. Her throat was raw from screaming. "The king wanted to interrogate you himself. Sweet, isn't it? He actually believes there might be truth in your little note." Serelith smiled, and it didn't reach her eyes. "But I convinced him to let me handle it first. Woman to woman. I told him you'd be more likely to confess to me." She reached out and gripped Aelith's chin, forcing her head up. "So here's what's going to happen, little ghost. You're going to tell me who put you up to this, which of my enemies hired you. And then, you're going to sign a confession admitting you were paid to assassinate the king." "No one hired me," Aelith rasped. "I told the truth." Serelith's nails dug into her jaw. "The truth is whatever I decide it is. You have no pack, no family, and no name. You're not even a real wolf. You're nothing." She released Aelith's face and stood, brushing off her gown as if she'd touched something unclean. "General Wren has offered to extract the confession personally. He's quite skilled at it." She glanced back at the hulking man in the doorway. "I told him to take his time, By morning, you'll be begging to sign anything I put in front of you." Sarilith swept toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and that ugly little pendant of yours? I had it melted down. The silver was barely worth a copper, but the look on your face right now?" She laughed softly. "Priceless." The door slammed shut. General Wren stepped forward, unbuckling his belt. "Let's begin," he said. The first blow cracked across Aelith's face, splitting her lip. She tasted copper. The second caught her ribs, driving the air from her lungs. The third. Something inside her snapped. Not broke. Snapped. Like a chain under too much tension finally giving way. The whispers in her head rose to a scream. The hum in her bones became a thunderclap. Heat erupted through her veins, so intense she thought she was being burned alive from the inside. General Wren raised his fist for another blow, but he never landed it. Aelith's hand shot up and caught his wrist. Her grip shouldn't have been strong enough to stop a trained alpha warrior. But Wren's eyes went wide as his bones ground together, and he couldn't pull free. "What?" he gasped. Aelith looked up at him. Her eyes were no longer violet. They were molten gold, blazing like twin suns in the darkness of the cell. And they were filled with something ancient, something that had been sleeping for a very long time. "You should not have touched what belongs to the storm," a voice said. It came from Aelith's mouth, but it wasn't her voice. It was layered, harmonic, echoing with the weight of centuries. She released Wren's wrist and stood. Her body moved with a grace she had never possessed, as if something else was guiding her limbs. The pain was indescribable. Her spine stretching, her muscles tearing and reforming, her skin rippling like water disturbed by a stone. But beneath the agony was a wild, furious joy. This was what had been locked away. This was what the whispers had been trying to tell her. She wasn't broken. She had never been broken. She had been caged. General Wren scrambled backward, fumbling for his sword. "Guards! Guards!" The cell door burst open. 4 soldiers poured in, weapons drawn. They froze. Where Aelith had stood, a wolf now crouched. But this was no ordinary wolf. She was massive, nearly 6 feet at the shoulder, her fur the deep black of a moonless sky. But it wasn't just black. It seemed to absorb the torchlight, pulling shadows toward her like a living void. And her eyes, those blazing sun-bright irises, cast their own light, illuminating the terror on the faces of the men before her. The soldiers' wolves, their inner beasts, recoiled in primal recognition. This was not a creature to fight. This was a creature to flee. One of the guards dropped to his knees, whimpering. Another turned and ran. General Wren raised his sword with shaking hands. "Stay back! Stay!" The wolf didn't lunge. She didn't need to. She simply looked at him and growled. The sound was low, resonant, and it didn't just fill the cell. It filled the entire dungeon. It vibrated through the stone walls, cracked the mortar between the bricks, and sent dust raining from the ceiling. Wren's sword clattered to the ground. His legs buckled. The Alpha General, commander of Iron Veil's armies, fell to his knees before a creature he had beaten moments ago. The wolf stepped over him, dismissing him like the insect he was. She walked through the dungeon corridor, her massive paws silent on the stone. Cell doors rattled as she passed. Prisoners pressed themselves against the far walls of their cells, some crying and some praying. She climbed the stairs. The dungeon opened into the lower halls of the keep. Servants scattered like mice, screaming. Guards raised crossbows, but their hands trembled too badly to aim. The wolf ignored them all. She had only one destination, the Great Hall. The doors were iron-bound oak, 12 feet tall, designed to withstand a siege. She hit them at full speed. The doors exploded inward, ripped from their hinges, crashing onto the marble floor in a shower of splinters. The music stopped. The laughter died. 500 nobles turned to see a nightmare standing in the entrance, shadows coiling around her like living serpents, eyes like burning coins sweeping the room. At the high table, Lady Sarilith screamed, and the wolf smiled. Chaos erupted. Nobles scrambled over each other to flee. Tables overturned, sending goblets and platters crashing. Guards rushed forward, then hesitated, their instincts warring between duty and survival. But one figure didn't move. King Soren Vile stood slowly from his throne, his winter-pale eyes fixed on the massive black wolf. His expression wasn't fear, it was recognition. "Everyone stop," he commanded. His voice cut through the pandemonium like a blade. The alpha authority in it was absolute, undeniable. Even the fleeing nobles froze mid-step. Soren descended from the dais, walking directly toward the wolf. His guards moved to intercept him, but he raised a hand, halting them without looking. "My king, that creature—" one guard started. "That creature," Soren said quietly, "is not your concern." He stopped 10 feet from the wolf. She was enormous, dwarfing him, her shadow-wrapped form blocking the ruined doorway. Her blazing gaze bore into his, and in them, he saw something beyond animal rage. He saw recognition. "Aelith," he said. Not a question. A statement. The wolf's ears flicked. A low rumble built in her chest, but it wasn't a growl. It was something closer to a purr. Soren reached into his jacket and withdrew something that caught the candlelight. A tarnished pendant. A crescent moon wrapped in thorns. "I took it from Sarilith's chambers an hour ago," he said. "She lied about melting it. She wanted to study it. She was afraid of what it meant." He held it up, letting it dangle from its chain. "I know what this is. I know what you are." Behind him, Sarilith's voice rose in desperate fury. "Soren! That monster killed your guards. She attacked the general. She's a feral beast. She needs to be put down." Soren didn't turn around. The general who was supposed to be at his post, not in the dungeons? The general whose scent is all over her blood? Now he turned, and his voice dropped to something deadly. "The general who, according to my investigation over the past 3 hours, has been meeting secretly with my fiancé for months?" The color drained from Sarilith's face. "I read the note," Soren continued. "And then I searched your study. I found the vial. I found the letters. I found everything. Those are lies, fabrications planted by who? A Packless servant girl who can barely read?" Soren's laugh was cold. "You underestimated her. Just like you underestimated me." He turned back to the wolf. "Shift back," he said gently. "You're safe now. I give you my word as king." For a long moment, nothing happened. The wolf's massive form trembled, the shadows around her flickering uncertainly. Then, slowly, the darkness receded. The black fur rippled and retracted. Bones reshaped with wet, grinding sounds. The wolf shrank, compressed, and reformed. Aelith knelt on the marble floor, naked and shaking, her dark copper hair falling around her face like a curtain. Her skin was pale, unmarked. The bruises from Ren's beating had vanished as if they'd never existed. Soren shrugged off his black coat and draped it over her shoulders before anyone could gawk. He crouched beside her, his voice low. "Can you stand?" "I don't—" Her voice cracked. "I don't understand what's happening to me." "I do." He helped her to her feet, keeping his body between her and the crowd. "And I'll explain everything. But first, we need to get you somewhere safe." He turned to his guards. "Lady Sarilith Kane and General Maddox Wren are under arrest for high treason, conspiracy to commit regicide, and attempted murder. Take them to the tower cells. Separate them. No visitors. You can't do this! Serelith shrieked as guards seized her arms. I am your betrothed. I am the future queen. You are a traitor, Soren said flatly, and you will face the king's justice. He looked out at the stunned crowd of nobles. This banquet is over. Return to your quarters. Tomorrow, there will be a full tribunal. His arm tightened around Aelith's shoulders, and there will be a reckoning. He guided Aelith toward a side door, away from the wreckage and the staring eyes. As they walked, she heard the whispers starting. Shocked, frightened, awed. Did you see the size of that wolf? A void wolf. I thought they were extinct. The Thorncrest bloodline. Impossible. Aelith stumbled, and Soren caught her. Easy, he murmured. You've just been through more than most wolves experience in a lifetime. The pendant, she whispered. What does it mean? What am I? Soren looked down at her, and for the first time his cold mask cracked. Beneath it, she saw something unexpected. Hope. You, he said, are the last daughter of the Thorncrest dynasty, the bloodline that ruled before my family took the throne. Your ancestors were the moon goddess's chosen, the first wolves, the Voidwalkers. He pressed the pendant into her palm. You're not nothing, Aelith. You never were. He pushed open a door, revealing a warmly lit chamber with a roaring fire and a bed piled with furs. Rest. Recover. Tomorrow, I'll tell you everything. He turned to leave. Wait, Aelith called. Her voice was stronger now. Why are you helping me? I'm a servant, a packless orphan, and apparently, my bloodline is your family's rival. Soren paused at the door. He didn't turn around. Because you risked your life to save mine when you had nothing to gain. Because you told the truth when lies would have been safer. He glanced back over his shoulder and his eyes held hers. And because I learned something else tonight. Something I haven't told you yet. Aelith's heart stuttered. What? His jaw went rigid. The mate bond. I felt it snap into place the moment I touched your wrist. He walked out and closed the door behind him, leaving Aelith alone with the fire, the pendant clutched in her fist, and 1,000 questions burning in her chest. Sleep didn't come easy. Aelith lay beneath the furs, staring at the ceiling, her mind a tempest. The pendant rested against her chest, warm as a heartbeat. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw golden fire, felt the surge of power that had torn through her like a river breaking through a dam. And Soren's words echoed endlessly. The mate bond. I felt it snap into place. A knock came at dawn. Soren entered carrying a tray with bread, cheese, and steaming tea. He'd changed from his formal attire into simple black, a fitted tunic and leather trousers. Without the crown and ceremony, he looked younger, more dangerous. You should eat, he said, setting the tray down. The first shift burns through energy faster than anything. Aelith pulled the coat tighter around herself. Someone had left clothes for her, a simple gray dress. But she hadn't changed yet. She wasn't ready to let go of the garment that smelled like pine and winter wind. Like him. You said you'd explain everything. Soren sat in the chair across from her. What do you know about the Thorncrest dynasty? He asked. Stories. Legends. Aelith shrugged. They ruled before the Veils. They were supposed to be blessed by the moon goddess herself. Then they disappeared. They were hunted. Systematically exterminated by a coalition of rival packs who feared their power. His face hardened. My ancestors were part of that coalition. Aelith's blood chilled. Your family killed mine. My family helped kill yours, Soren corrected, and there was no deflection in his voice. 300 years ago, the 5 great alphas united against the Thorncrest king, They called it the purging. And what was the real reason? Fear. Jealousy. Soren's laugh was bitter. The thorn crests could do things other wolves couldn't. They could walk in shadows, bend darkness, and hear the whispers of the dead. And their alpha bloodline carried something else, something that made the other families desperate. He reached out and touched the pendant at her throat. His fingers brushed her skin, and Aelith felt the invisible thread between them pull taut, a jolt of electricity that made her gasp. This crest marks the heir to the Thorncrest throne. It's not just a symbol, it's a seal. Whoever wears it carries the blessing of the void, the ability to channel the darkness between worlds. Aelith's hand closed over the pendant. That's why I never shifted. The pendant was suppressing my wolf? No. The pendant was protecting your wolf. Without it, you would have shifted too young, too powerfully. You would have drawn attention. But I wasn't wearing it when I shifted in the dungeon. No. Sarilith took it, and the trauma of Ren's attack broke through the final barriers. Soren's eyes darkened. In a way, she caused the very thing she feared. She woke the Void Wolf. Aelith stood, pacing to the window. Outside, the sun was rising over the snow-capped mountains. My parents, she said. Who were they? Your father was Aldrich Thorncrest, the last king of the Void Wolves. Your mother was Seraphina. They went into hiding when the remaining loyalist packs were destroyed 19 years ago. They were betrayed. Someone revealed their location. They died protecting you. Yarn, Aelith whispered. The name surfaced from somewhere deep. There was a man named Yarn. Your father's sworn shield. He smuggled you out during the attack and brought you here, the last place anyone would look. Soren's voice softened. He died a year later, killed in what was called a training accident. I suspect it was assassination. Aelith pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Her entire life had been a lie. Every moment of suffering, every cruel word. She had endured it all while carrying the blood of kings. And the mate bond? She asked, turning. They were inches apart. Is that real? Soren's eyes held hers. It's real. The goddess doesn't make mistakes, Aelith, even when her choices are inconvenient. I'm the heir to a murdered dynasty. Your family helped murder them. And now we're supposed to be fated mates? Yes. That's insane. Yes? She stared at him, waiting for more. But Soren just looked back, steady and patient. You're not going to try to convince me? No. The bond is there. You feel it as strongly as I do. But what we do about it... He stepped back, giving her space. That's your choice. It will always be your choice. A horn blared outside, 3 sharp blasts. Soren's expression hardened. What is that? Tribunal summons. Sarilith's trial was supposed to be this afternoon, but that horn means someone has invoked the old laws. What old laws? Soren paused at the threshold. Trial by combat, and if I had to guess, Sarilith just named you as her opponent. The Great Hall had been transformed overnight. The broken doors had been replaced with heavy curtains. The overturned tables had been cleared, leaving a vast empty space in the center of the marble floor. Around the perimeter, the nobles of Ironvale and the visiting alphas sat in tiered rows. Aelith walked through the entrance with her head high. She had traded Soren's coat for something else that had appeared mysteriously on her bed. A fitted black tunic embroidered with silver thorns, leather trousers, boots that actually fit, and the pendant, gleaming against her collarbone. Someone had known. Someone had prepared. She suspected it was the king. Soren stood on the dais, flanked by his advisors. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes tracked Aelith as she moved through the crowd. She felt the connection between them hum, a silent reassurance. I'm here. At the far end of the hall, Lady Saralith Kane waited. She was dressed in white, a mockery of innocence. Her golden hair was loose, cascading over her shoulders. Her wrists were unbound. Apparently, trial by combat came with certain privileges. General Wren stood behind her, also unchained. His face was a mask of bruises, but his eyes burned with hatred when they landed on Aelith. Elder Varric, the keeper of the old laws, stepped forward. Lady Saralith Kane stands accused of high treason, conspiracy to commit regicide, and attempted murder. She has invoked the right of fangs. She has named General Maddox Wren as her champion. A murmur ran through the crowd. Wren was a killer, the most decorated warrior in Ironvale's army. Elder Varric turned to Aelith. The accused victim may also name a champion. Do you wish? No. Aelith's voice rang out, silencing the whispers. I will fight for myself. The murmur became a roar. A servant girl, no, a lost princess, facing the general who had tortured her just yesterday? Saralith laughed. How perfect. The little ghost wants to play warrior. She stepped forward. I should thank you, you know. If you'd kept your mouth shut, I would have been queen by now. Aelith didn't flinch. And instead, you're going to watch your champion fall. Saralith's smile flickered. Such confidence. Did the king whisper sweet lies in your ear? She leaned closer, dropping her voice. He's using you, little ghost. Once you've served your purpose, he'll dispose of you just like his ancestors disposed of your family. Aelith met her gaze. Maybe. But at least I'll die knowing I didn't have to poison my way to power. Saralith's mask cracked. Rage flickered beneath the beauty. Kill her slowly, Saralith hissed to Wren. Make her beg. General Wren stepped forward, cracking his neck. He was stripped to the waist, his torso a canvas of scars and muscle. A silver short sword hung at his hip. Aelith had nothing. Elder Varric raised his hand. The right of fangs permits weapons or wolves. Choose your form. Wren drew his sword. I'll take her apart piece by piece in human form first. Then I'll let my wolf finish what's left. He looked at Aelith with contempt. You should have stayed in the kitchens, runt. Aelith felt the void wolf stir inside her, a presence that was both her and not her, ancient and patient. It pressed against her consciousness, eager to be released. Not yet, she told it. Let him think he's winning. She dropped into a fighting stance, hands empty, and smiled. Come find out why my family ruled for 1,000 years. Wren charged. The general was fast. His blade whistled through the air, a silver blur aimed at Aelith's throat. She twisted, feeling the wind of its passage against her cheek. Too close. She wasn't a trained fighter. 19 years of scrubbing floors hadn't taught her swordplay. She had instinct. She had the awakening power humming through her veins, and she had something Wren didn't expect. She had survived worse than him. Wren pressed his attack, blade slicing in controlled arcs meant to herd her, corner her. She dodged, ducked, retreated, but she was running out of space. Stop dancing, Wren snarled. He lunged, and this time his blade caught her arm, opening a shallow cut that welled with crimson. Pain flared. The crowd murmured. On the dais, Soren's hands gripped the armrests of his throne, knuckles white. Aelith stumbled backward, clutching her arm. Blood dripped between her fingers. Wren grinned, advancing slowly now, savoring the key moment. There it is, he said. The fear. I smelled it in the dungeon, underneath all that defiance. Aelith's breath came in ragged gasps. The void wolf was roaring inside her skull, demanding release. The shadows in the corners of the hall were trembling, straining toward her. Let me out. Let me destroy him. She closed her eyes. The crowd saw a wounded girl accepting her fate. Sarilith's triumphant smile widened, but inside, Aelith was doing something else. She wasn't fighting the wolf anymore. She was listening to it. "You think power is about violence?" the ancient voice whispered. "It is not. Power is about control, about choosing when to strike. Let him come. Let him think he's won." Ren raised his sword for a finishing blow. "Any last words, Ghost?" Aelith opened her eyes. They were solid gold. "Yes," she said. "Look down." Ren glanced at his feet and froze. Shadows had pooled around his ankles, thick as tar, crawling up his legs. He tried to move, but the darkness held him like chains. What is this?" Aelith straightened, the wound on her arm already knitting closed. The shadows weren't just around Ren anymore. They were everywhere, slithering across the floor, climbing the walls, blotting out the torches one by one. The Void Wolf wasn't coming out. Aelith was bringing the void to her. "My ancestors could walk between worlds," she said, her voice layered with that ancient harmonic. "They could speak to the dead, bend darkness, and unmake their enemies without lifting a claw." She stepped toward Ren. With each step, the shadows tightened around him. "You beat me in a dungeon when I was chained and powerless. You thought that made you strong." She stopped inches from him. "It made you a coward. And cowards don't survive the void." Ren's sword clattered from his grip. His whole body was encased in shadow now, only his face visible, contorted in primal terror. "Yield!" Aelith commanded. I yield, I yield." The words echoed through the silent hall. Aelith held him for one heartbeat longer, letting everyone see, and then she released him. The shadows retreated as the torches flickered back to life. Ren collapsed to his knees, gasping. Aelith turned to face Sarilith. The former lady stood rigid, her white gown stark against her bloodless face. "Your champion has yielded," Aelith said. "By the old laws, his guilt is your guilt." Elder Varric stepped forward. "The right of Fangs has been satisfied. Sarilith Kane is hereby found guilty. The sentence is death." "No!" Sarilith screamed. She whirled toward Soren. "You can't do this!" Soren rose from his throne. His face was utterly without mercy. "Take the traitors to the execution yard. They will face the axe at sunset." Guards seized Sarilith and the broken general, dragging them away. Sarilith's screams echoed through the hall long after she disappeared. Soren descended the dais and took Aelith's hand, their fingers interlacing. "Let it be known," he announced, "Aelith Thorncrest is no longer a servant. She is the last of the Voidwalkers, rightful heir to the dynasty that ruled before my own." He raised her hand. "And she is my fated mate." The silence shattered into chaos, some cheering, some gasping, some whispering in disbelief. But Aelith barely heard them. She was looking at Soren, at the intensity in his eyes, at the way his hand held hers like she was something precious. For the first time in 19 years, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. The days that followed were a blur. There were meetings with advisors, fittings for new clothes, lessons in court etiquette that made Aelith's head spin. The nobles treated her with wary respect now. The same hands that had ignored her existence were suddenly eager to shake hers. And through it all, there was Soren. He was careful with her. He maintained distance in public, touched her only when necessary. But the bond didn't care about propriety. It pulled at her constantly, a magnetic hunger that made her hyper-aware of his presence in any room. One evening, a week after the trial, Aelith found him in the castle library. He was standing by the window, staring out at the snow-covered mountains. "You're avoiding me," she said. Soren turned. "I'm giving you space." "I didn't ask for space." He set down his book. "Aelith, a month ago you were scrubbing my floors. Now you're a princess and my mate. That's a lot of change. You think I'll run? I think you deserve the choice. Aelith crossed the room until she was standing before him. I've been making choices my whole life, she said quietly. Stay quiet or get beaten. Stay invisible or get killed. She looked up at him. For once, I want to choose something because I want it. Soren's breath caught. And what do you want? Instead of answering, Aelith rose on her toes and kissed him. The bond exploded. It was like lightning and honey, fire and ice. Every sensation amplified 1,000-fold. Soren made a low sound in his throat and pulled her against him, one hand fisting in her hair. The kiss deepened, and Aelith felt something click into place inside her chest. Home. This was home. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Soren pressed his forehead to hers. You're sure? He whispered. I'm sure. A horn shattered the moment, deeper, more urgent. Soren's face went pale. What is it? The border alarm. He was already moving, pulling her toward the door. We're under attack. Seralith's allies? Worse. The Pure Keep Order. The fanatics who hunted your bloodline 300 years ago. His grip tightened on her hand. They know you're alive, and they're coming to finish what they started. The Pure Keep Order came in the dead of night. They wore white cloaks over silver armor, their faces hidden behind featureless masks. There were hundreds of them. Warriors, zealots, and true believers. They poured through the mountain passes like a pale tide, torches blazing. Aelith stood on the castle battlements, watching them come. They've been preparing this for years, Soren said grimly. Sleeper agents in every kingdom across the continent. Seralith was working with them. She promised to deliver you. Below, the Iron Veil army was forming ranks, but the Pure Keep forces kept coming. We're outnumbered, one general muttered. I'm going down there, Aelith said. Soren grabbed her arm. There are too many. Even a Void Wolf can't. I'm not going to fight them. She turned to face him, her eyes already flickering gold. I'm going to end this. She kissed him once, hard and fast, then vaulted over the battlement. The fall should have killed her. Instead, shadows caught her, lowering her gently to the ground. She walked forward, alone, into the no-man's land between the armies. The Pure Keep forces halted. From their ranks emerged a figure in ornate white robes, their High Inquisitor, a gaunt man with eyes like chips of ice. The abomination shows herself, he called. How convenient. Aelith stopped 50 feet from him. I know what you did to my family, she said. I know about the purging, the 300 years of hunting down every Thorncrest survivor. We cleansed a corruption, we did holy work. You did butchery, and you called it righteousness. Aelith raised her hands. Let me show you what righteousness really looks like. She reached deep inside herself, past the wolf, past the darkness, and touched something ancient. Something that had been sleeping in her bloodline since the first wolf walked beneath the moon. The sky went dark. Not clouds, not night. Pure, absolute darkness, the void between stars. It rolled over the battlefield like a wave, swallowing the torches, drowning the moonlight. Screams erupted from the Pure Keep ranks. Soldiers clawed at their eyes, unable to see. The perfect formation dissolved into chaos, but Aelith could see perfectly. In the void, she was home. She walked through the panicking army untouched. Soldiers stumbled past her, not knowing she was inches away. She reached the High Inquisitor. He was on his knees, whimpering. Please, he gasped. Mercy. Did you show mercy to the children you burned? The mothers you drowned? Aelith crouched before him. Your order ends tonight. Not through slaughter, through truth. She pressed her palm to his forehead. The void flooded into him, not killing him, but opening his eyes. She showed him everything. Every victim. Every scream. 300 years of atrocity, compressed into a single moment. The Inquisitor screamed until he had no voice left. When Aelith released him, he crumpled, catatonic. She stood and raised her voice. I am Aelith Thorncrest, last of the Void Walkers. Your leaders lied to you. Your holy war was genocide. Go home, or stay, and face the darkness. She let the void recede slowly, giving them back the moonlight. One by one, the white-cloaked soldiers dropped their weapons and fled. Arms caught her as her legs gave out. I've got you, Soreni murmured against her hair. The war was over before it truly began. Aelith looked up at his face, at the wonder and pride blazing in his eyes. Did I do well? She whispered. You did everything. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. Rest now, my queen. 6 months later, the great hall of Ironvale Keep looked nothing like it had on that winter night, when a servant girl had passed a desperate note to a king. The walls were draped in black and silver, the colors of both houses intertwined. Thousands of candles blazed. Nobles from every kingdom filled the seats. Aelith stood at the foot of the dais. Her gown was midnight silk embroidered with silver thorns and crescent moons. Her dark copper hair was swept up in an elaborate style threaded with diamonds, and at her throat, the pendant gleamed. Behind her, standing among the servants, was Corvin Slade. The former master of servants had been stripped of his rank, his cruelties exposed. Now he wore the plain gray of the lowest household staff. He didn't meet her eyes. Good. Elder Varric's ancient voice carried through the hall. We gather to witness a union not seen in 300 years, the joining of two bloodlines, two powers, two destinies. Soren descended the steps. He was dressed in black and silver, a crown of iron wolves circling his brow. But his eyes were soft as he took Aelith's hands. Ready? I've been ready my whole life. I just didn't know it. They ascended together. Elder Varric lifted a crown, a circlet of silver thorns. Aelith Thorncrest, do you accept the throne, the bond, and the burden? I swear. The crown settled onto her head. Then rise, Queen Aelith of Ironvale, Void Walker, Maid of the King. She turned to face the crowd. The nobles didn't just bow. They knelt. Every single one. Soren's hand found hers. What are you thinking? He asked softly. I'm thinking about a girl who scrubbed floors and dreamed of being seen. She squeezed his hand. And how she ended up here. Any regrets? Only that I didn't pass that note sooner. Soren laughed. A real laugh. Warm and unguarded. He raised their joined hands. Long live the Queen! The crowd roared back. Long live the Queen! Aelith smiled. Not the meek survivalist smile of the girl she'd been. A queen smile. The ghost of Ironvale was gone forever. In her place stood a legend. If you love this story, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. We drop fresh stories every day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.